What is up, everyone? As promised, I did a couple drafts with Sackreligious, and we've come to the conclusion that Sackreligious says stacking is dead. Now, of course, he didn't truly say that. I didn't talk to him. He doesn't even know who I am. But we did look at the drafts. We did analyze the drafts a little bit. We're going to do more of that on the video today and see what we can learn. I'm sure that it's not even coming from him. It's probably just coming from their sidekick tool. My guess is he's probably doing 10 other things and drafting with the sidekick tool and letting that do all the work. Of course, maybe I'm wrong there as well, but that would be my assumption. We're going to look at these two drafts. One was before the NFL draft, one was after the NFL draft. So, first, we're going to look at it from a stacking perspective because that's what the video says here. But then we're going to look at it from a couple other ways as well and see if there's anything else we can gain from his teams. So let's get into it. If as we go over the team, if there's something that you think that we should have learned that I missed on, let me know that as well. Okay. So here's the first team that we did. This one was on Underdog. This was a pre-draft team that we had, and it was in one of those UDFAs. I think it was the UDFA 2. And he's over here on the turn at the 12 pick. And if we look at his team, we can see that he's got Mahomes, Purdy, and Stroud as his QBs. So three QBs in that window, basically. A falling Purdy. He kind of pulled up Mahomes a little bit, and then Stroud around ADP, if I'm not mistaken. And if you look at his team here, he's got no KC players at all. He drafted a bunch of rookies. None of them ended up in KC, but no KC players at all. And then if we go and look at, you got Brock Purdy, and he ended up with a stack, but he didn't intentionally do it because if we go through here, no San Francisco players except for Stribling at the end. Again, it was not intentional. So no stacks there with San Francisco. And then CJ Stroud was the last one. And you look here, there's no Houston players until Schultz here, who was his third tight end at pick 181, which is basically a value as well, if I'm not mistaken. So no stacking at all, basically, except for the one that he just fell into on this team. Now, he drafted another team with me. This one is on DraftKings, and this one's a little different because this is in one of those um, five max drafts. And one thing that we'll talk about later on is it is a small final size as well, it looks like. So we'll talk about that a bit later on. But he went Mahomes again right here. In fact, I was hoping Mahomes would get to me. And if you watch the video, I'm like, yeah, he's probably going to take him here at 88. And he did. So I wasn't happy about that a little bit. It would have been nice to get him. Um, but Mahomes here, and you see no one that he's stacking with up top. In fact, I think he's got Tate and Mahomes in both these teams, right? There's Tate, there's Mahomes on both the teams. There you go. If I would have let Brock Purdy go, he probably would have taken Brock Purdy with this next pick as well. My guess is that the Sims like Mahomes from listening to people with the sidekick talk. And I think that it might like Purdy as well, actually, or maybe just they like the value at 105 type of thing. But I'm pretty sure it likes Mahomes a lot. So he's got Mahomes. He didn't stack it up at all. In his defense, he would have had a hard time stacking it up at value based on where the rest of the KC players went for the most part, but he didn't. Then he's got CJ Stroud here, and he kind of stacked him up with a running back, a non-pass catching running back. And then way late in the draft, he got Tank Dell at 184. And so he kind of stacked up CJ Stroud. And then he's got Mendoza here, and I don't think he's got Mendoza stacked up. He doesn't have Mendoza stacked up with anyone. In fact, when he took Mendoza here, no, he didn't pass up on Geno Smith. Geno Smith was one pick before him. So he probably would have taken Geno Smith if he was available, I'd imagine. But he didn't, and he took Fernando Mendoza instead. Uh, were there any like QBs that he could have? So look at this. this is after the draft, so the NFL draft. So he could have, instead of taking CJ Stroud here, he could have taken like Coker, McMillan, any running back or wide. He probably didn't want to. He took so many early running backs. He probably wasn't going to take another running back, but he could have taken any. Could have taken one of these tight ends, and then he could have taken Ward at 138 to stack up with Tate. But instead of doing that, he just took Stroud here at 129. So my guess is that the Sims, the sidekick, likes CJ Stroud as well, is my guess. And then he took from Naked Mendoza here at 153. So my guess is that I think maybe the Sims like all three of those QBs for the most part, is my guess. But they're unstacked. They're unstacked. And even when he could have gotten a stack by just kind of pushing this QB, or he could have taken Ward instead of Cooper. So the Sims might not like Ward either. Who knows? But you can tell that he is not stacking at all. He could have taken Daniel Jones to stack with Josh Downs. He didn't do that either. He took CJ Stroud right here. So just no stacks at all. Now, let's take a look at this from a couple other perspectives. This one was the one pre-draft, and I found it interesting what he did here because, well, let's before we do that, let's talk comparisons between the two drafts a little bit. This one, 5 running backs, with 4 of them in the first 7 rounds, and then the 5th one in the 10th round. So 5 running backs through 10 rounds, which is not something that people are usually, especially a couple years ago, you were ever doing. But he's got 5 through 10 rounds. In this one, he only drafted 4 running backs, and it was 4 through 5 rounds. So 4 of his first 5 picks were running backs. So the Sims are really kind of leaning into this, like, I think the Sims are really leaning into this, like, what is the projectable volume? Like, what are the projectable points? And let's make sure we get our projectable points. And then let's just roll the dice later on and see if the dice come up for me with the other picks. Now, there might be something as far as like value and whatnot as well. Like, for example, maybe if I didn't take Pickens and Pickens and Hall were available, does he take Pickens instead because Pickens is more ADP value type of thing? Maybe. But he didn't do that. He just took Hall here, and then Williams fell to 40. So maybe the ADP value again there 40, and then Montgomery fell to 57. So he had a lot of fallers here, which is part of the reason why he probably took 4 running backs in this one. But he's not afraid to do that and stop at 4. And so, and I don't think we should be either, especially if you get unique, interesting combos. Like you're not just doing it by pulling players up, but they're actually just coming to you. And in this one here though is a little bit different in that, and this is the pre-draft one again. He has 2 running backs up front, standard 2 for the most part right here. Like you can jumble these up a bit, but totally legit 2 right here. He did pull up Javonte Williams a bit because he isn't usually going until like 38, 39, 40, 41, something like that. So he pulled him up definitely. And then he took Warren here at 84, which is, I want to say he was like 80, so he fell a little bit. And then he got a falling Pollard. I was hoping Pollard would probably make it to me. I was hoping Pollard would make it to me probably at pick 115 because he was falling more and more. Um, but he got him at 115. Then he stopped at 5. So you can see here, this was like a combination of getting a couple fallers, but also pulling up a couple people. He pulled up Williams, maybe a little bit of a faller, and then a little bit of faller. So he took it right there too. 3 wide receivers through 10 on this one. And these are both 20-round drafts because one is pre-draft for underdog, and this one is a DK. And this one he had, is it only one? Two, 3 wide. Okay, so 3 wide receivers through 10 on both teams. 3 wide receivers through 10 on both teams. So interesting. In the past, you won like 5 wide receivers through 10. He went 3 wide receivers through 10. So totally different how he built his team. Totally different how he built his team here. What else? What else? What else? What else? He, like we said, he avoided stacks on both of them. He didn't know who Tennessee, he didn't know where they were going, so he couldn't do that. One of the other things that was interesting here is that he really leaned into the rookies in this pre-draft one, in that rookie wide receiver pulled up Lemon all the way to 61. I think that's pull up. to 61 right there. And then um, took Hunter around ADP, Stroud, I think, around ADP for the most part, Goddard around ADP. They like Henry too. I think Henry's on both of his teams. On this team here, that's the reason I know that is because I remember I wanted Henry to fall to me because we were very light at tight end. We had only Johnson. Is that right? Yeah, we had only Johnson. We were hoping Henry would fall to us. He did. He took Henry, and he took Henry in this one as his third tight end. This is a little unheard of too. A third tight end when you draft an elite one, and you take another one at 7 and another one at 14. Usually, if you're taking someone like McBride and then you end up taking Fannin here, not really at much of a value either, by the way. Not like you stole him at 81. You're stopping at 2. But he took the slight falling value in Henry. I want to say he's like a in the late to mid 150s, and he took about 160 unstacked to get a third tight end, which is interesting. Now if he's stopping at 4 running backs, he has room to play with. So there's that as well. Maybe I'm sure the sidekick is like saying you don't need any more running backs. There's also no one that we see that's going to help you considering the top 4 that you have. Also, looking at the wide receivers here, they're all kind of the same, so it doesn't matter. But Henry pops compared to all the tight ends and is going to maybe get you points in a week, while the rest of the wide receivers, any of them will get you the same amount of points in a given week. So that's probably how it's looking at it, which makes sense. It's just not how most people are building, probably. So something to think about there when with your team. Don't be suckered into that 5th running back here or something like that is probably part of it. Like he could have taken Keaton Mitchell at 161, and I think that would have been more of an ADP value as well for a 5th running back. I think most people probably do that, but they stuck at 4 and they went with Hunter Henry as their third tight end. So I think there's a little bit of a lesson there. If you know you're good at 4, don't be suckered in by like a 5 or 6 pick ADP value. And maybe your third tight end is, I don't know, maybe there isn't something to learn there, but be flexible, I guess, a little bit. I could see, like, I think you're kind of making a decision on this team. You're saying, I'm drafting my running back, my wide receiver so late that I'm going to get 10 wide receivers. And then it's, do I want 3 tight ends or 5 running backs? I think is maybe what you're asking there. I think that's maybe a better way to look at it, possibly for this. But again, no stacks with any of it. In the pre-draft one, again, he just rolled the dice on a bunch of rookies here too. He went Tate Lemon, and then down here he went Surratt, Bernard, Lance, Stribling. And he gets gonna get some closing line value on Stribling. He's gonna get some closing line value on Bernard. Surratt, probably. I mean, like we don't know what's gonna happen by the end of the season, but right now, probably not. That being said, he is an interesting pick. And if Baltimore comes out and says Surratt's going to play a huge part in this team, then he probably will get some closing line value on it. Lance, probably not going to get any closing line value on that one at all. And he's probably not going to get any closing line value on Tate I mean, Tate maybe, probably not on Lemon though. Right. Uh, so there's that right there. But what are they doing in the end when we're looking at these? In both drafts, really targeting running backs, especially if they fall to you, not being afraid to stop at, excuse me, 4 or 5 running backs, not getting the 6th just because it says you need to, pushing wide receivers and getting a lot of them, and maybe always ending up with 3 tight ends no matter what, assuming there's value at tight end. I don't know if you're always going to end at 3, but it looks like it really likes the 3 tight ends and the 3 running backs when you have 20 rounds basically. So maybe we need to run to them again in an 18 round draft and see how it changes. But these 20s, they must just really like 3 and 3 regardless of what your quality is at those positions, right? Like even if you have good quality, they still want the quantity of 3 no matter what, basically. Last thing, And so this, from a stacking perspective, we said here, Sackreligious is saying stacking is dead. And I think in these drafts, it's kind of showing that. Of course, he's not saying it. I haven't spoken to him, so I'm not putting words in his mouth. I was just trying to get you to click on the video, honestly, right? But uh, one thing that I think as I've been thinking about this, one thing I think that he's doing right a little bit is that a lot of things, by the way. So I'm not saying there's just one thing he's doing right. This is something that I learned is a better way to put it. In the pre-draft, it's a little harder to stack because you don't know where a large portion of the population is going to be at, like what team they're going to be drafted by. And so you know that you're more likely to run up against other teams that aren't stacked either. So it's not something that's as necessary. And then on this one here, this is like a really small final. So we're going to bring this kind of full circle a little bit with the small final and stacking thing. This draft here has like a 14 team final or something like that. When you have that small of a final, you probably don't need to be stacked up that much because you don't have to have this like one of one outcome. You can have a one of you, you can have an outcome that is just normal and you're only going up against 13 other players. So if none of them go crazy, you just need to have some players hit and you win no matter what. You don't need this. I need this QB with these two receivers with this bring back because I'm competing against 1,000 other people or 600 other people or something like that. So I think he's definitely kind of like opening up my eyes and go like, okay, in these smaller final tournaments, we don't need to stack at all, basically, if we don't want to. And if we're not getting value from because of the stack and we're losing some value, we probably definitely don't want to stack at that point in time for the most part, again, because it's such a small final. And maybe with those smaller finals, going harder at running back earlier to get the projectable volume there so that you're have two or three bullets already ready, right? Two running backs and a flex ready. And now you're just competing at the three wide receiver spots and you're hoping that your quantity does something against the field. There's something to be said there as well, too. So I do think that well, field size, there's some intricacies to it, and sometimes it matters a lot, sometimes it doesn't matter a lot. I think if we're looking at a field of 14 teams for the final, we maybe should be ignoring stacking altogether to a certain extent. Like when you look at my team, I got Purdy here at 103, which is kind of a good value. It's stacked up with Evans and Rice. Or sorry, Evans, sorry, and McCaffrey. I feel good about it, but now that we're talking about it, like, did I need to do that? I mean, it's good because it's value, right? Like, so yeah, I'm glad I did it. I should have done it in this case. But let's say, for example, um, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes made it to 105 and I don't have Rice. Do I take Patrick Mahomes instead of Purdy in that case? Maybe I do just because in general, Mahomes is considered a better quarterback, and I don't need to be targeting stacks as much on these teams. So there's a lesson right there. Don't worry about the stacks as much. Don't pull them up, especially in these smaller field tournaments. And um, pre-draft, maybe the stacks aren't as valuable. And it sounds like just getting a ticket to the playoffs is what the Sims maybe are trying to get at the most with these projectable points here versus the more fluctuating points of some of these wide receivers in this range here. Let me know what I'm missing. Am I missing something? Have we learned enough from here? Is there another point that you think is a super important point? Do you think we didn't really go over my team specifically because that's not what this video is about, but do you think my teams are just horrible on this? They're definitely built differently, right? 3-7-7-3 versus 3-5-9-3. And then yeah, and another 3-7-7-3 versus 3-5-9-3. So I'm going more running backs, less wide receivers, more early wide receivers, stacking it up. So tell me who did it right. Sackreligious or the noob on the block. See you on the next one. Peace.